Spitting literally dribbles content. It is the noxious, viscous disdain of the act that makes it such a powerful and intimate insult.
Hello and welcome to the show, Colourful Conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark. This week we debate spitting, the most deplorable social act. Well, we've seen in recent times that social habits seem to be getting worse. Well, it's also getting worse with some people who are perhaps should know a little bit better. Shouldn't they, Jamie Carragher? Yes, the former Liverpool footballer was found guilty by being filmed spitting at a teenage girl and her dad whilst driving at speed along a motorway. Now, in the video, it appears as though Jamie Carragher was perhaps a little bit frustrated by the goading that he got after Liverpool lost 2-1 to Manchester United. But that's no excuse, is it, Mr. Carragher? Though your dribbling skills on the football pitch may have been great, unfortunately your spitting skills leave a lot to be desired. This unfortunate social habit has basically meant that he's been suspended from his job. Well, is that right? Some people think that he should be banned and never be allowed to be engaged on television or have anything to do with football ever again. Now, is that right? Perhaps, maybe the law should do things about it. Maybe we just got into a situation where spitting is just general social habit. We see it on the football pitch, don't we, Jamie? Yes, now I think that perhaps there are some issues here with Mr. Carragher's behaviour because he is seen as a role model. Many others perhaps think, well, actually, it doesn't really matter. People spit in the streets all the time. Well, yes, great, but not if you happen to be travelling in the wrong direction and you happen to get a bit of spittle on you. So, Clergyman Pete, just let me know your thoughts here on this one, because this is getting out of hand, isn't it? We see football players spitting on the football pitch. We see people in the street spitting. Where does it end? Is it perhaps spitting the worst social act that you can think of?
Well, I think that we need to take the two different motivations for spitting. You see, you can spit in order to clear phlegm from your throat to get the dust and grime out of your. If you developed a bit too much because you've been eating too many noodles or something. Certainly, I spent some time in China, and spitting on the streets was commonplace. Whereas in Western culture, spitting in public is seen as being rude, even if it's just simply simply getting rid of some dirt from your mouth. Now, the reason for that is we have in Western culture developed a horror at seeing bodily fluids. We don't even urinate in public. We have our public conveniences are actually pretty private. And there's a reason behind that, of course, which is that such bodily fluids can spread disease. And so
yes,
if you're going to spit, you should be into your handkerchief, should be disposed of privately. You don't spread it around. So it's not just social in that case. There's a practical reason behind it. Now, during the build-up to the Olympics in Beijing a few years ago, I happened to be around at that time in China, and passing through Beijing, I noticed lots of signs up telling people not to spit. And you didn't even need to be able to read Chinese. There was a graphic illustration of what you were not meant to do in sort of cartoon form, trying to stop people from spitting because of the sensibilities of Westerners. I don't think because of the practical reasons, but because of the sensibilities of Westerners. So there's that side of it. But another side to spitting is that it's seen as an aggressive act. It's something that you do to your enemy. And it starts when we're very young. I mean, it's something that children do to each other. If a child is extremely angry, one of the things that they'll do in a defence, if they feel under threat, they get angry, they will spit. And this is something that obviously they're taught not to do. And in fact, it's something that it's difficult not to respond angrily to, because if you're spat out, it does feel humiliating. And so there is something very visceral, something within us that both is humiliated by spitting and also is tempted to spit when you're angry. So,
Well,
so perhaps Mr. Carragher was just letting his inner tantrum come out.
Well, he may have done, but I guess the thing here is that he is seen as a role model. I mean, certainly from his career as a football player and certainly as a footballing pundit, somebody who is high profile on the media regularly, seemed to really effectively should be setting an example, or certainly a better example. Now, clearly he was goaded, clearly he was upset, but did that really merit the idea of actually leaning out of the window? And of course, we haven't even talked about the chaos it could have caused with him losing control of his vehicle, but actually spitting on another individual. So you talked about how visceral it was. This is probably about, for a lot of people, got a lot of people going on social media talking about it's the worst social taboo that's left, because it's not only just, as I said, an act which is sort of showing hatred, but it's also the disease that, if you've got spittle on you, or and it could spread lots of diseases, influenza and colds and many other things. So the very act of somebody else's bodily fluid on you is quite deplorable, really. And I think that surely, when we look at other things that are going on in society, we need to make more examples of people like Jamie Carragher who should really know better. Shouldn't we be perhaps have, let's say, for example, if you hit somebody in the street, you possibly be charged for grievous bodily harm and possibly sent to prison. Surely something like spitting should be of a serious social act which you should be punished for.
Yeah, well, I agree with it should be seen as a serious social act. I'm never in favour of not never in favour. My gut instinct is always not to go down the route of legislation where absolutely possible, and trying to restrict things from the top down, if you like, by bringing in legal repercussions, is never as effective if you can do it the other way, as in from grassroots up. So bring people up such that get people to be aware that it's something that you shouldn't do. Maybe it's shameful to do it. The adoption, it was adopted as a sort of a thing that you did back in the 70s. You and I in our punk years in the 70s would
when
have
we
been
had hair.
spitting. Yes, yes, and of course, gentle listener, neither of us actually went through any sort of punk stage, being far too square and respectable to anything like that. But we did occasionally eat too much dolly mixture, but we didn't take anything else noxious. But the thing about
We certainly didn't spit them out.
didn't spit them out, no, and that's the thing. During the 70s, it became known as a sort of thing that the punk performers would do. They'd actually spit on their supporters in gigs, and so there's, as I say, there's this idea of spitting is sort of an anti-authority thing to do, something you do if you're sort of daring and avant-garde. But as with a lot of these strange activities, these activities were not strange, but activities that were expected not to do because it was shameful to do them.
Yes. Well, I think
after a time, if you keep rebelling and keep doing it, you become the norm, and then it becomes time for the counter-revolution to begin. I think the counter-revolution is be more respectable, be more conservative. Conservative is the new revolutionary. It includes with other ways of swapping your bodily fluids, strange sexual activities people get up to. That needs to stop in the same way as blowing your nose on people and spitting on people. Johnny Rotten, the famous punk performer, aficionado, who is still around these days, making strange political comments. He used to blow his nose on stage, empty his nose out on stage, when supposedly, when he had some sort of problem, because he to clear the lungs for more melodious singing. But what happened was, I think with a lot of things like punk, that period, the reason I mention it is a lot of social changes came about that time, the 60s into the 70s. And the hairstyle of the time with people spiking up their hair, that was very popular for years afterwards, even with people who weren't the slightest bit punk. Well, and that seems to be going, and hopefully the sense of shame at doing something so antisocial as spitting will return.
I'm going to say I think that it's much deeper than that, and I'll explain why. In my opinion, I think this comes back to some other social habits. Now, as we know, there are some strange records that one can gain. I mean, remarkably, there is a Guinness World Record for cherry pit spitting.
Yes.
And so this is, again, the fact that there's an act where you can actually go into the record books for doing that. There's even one for cricket spitting, remarkably, and kudu dung spitting. So the point here is that we're sort of at a point where actually socially, you mentioned about punk rock and things like that, a little bit a while ago. I mean, we were talking about 30, 40 years ago now, but there's still these strange records where you can actually legitimately get into a world record just for spitting. Of course, there's the other side as well. I mean, of course, there's the wine tasting, where actually it's seen as etiquette that you do spit the wine out while you're tasting it. Similarly with supping tea. So there are professional people who get away with actually just spitting.
Yes.
That's obviously this is in a controlled way, but I think that really my thought here is that I personally feel there needs to be more legislation on this matter. So, Mr. Carragher, here is a little poem just for you. The Spitfire. A spat that ends in despicable spitting, especially from spiteful words spoken, unsportingly sparks in speedy hitting, and leaves you heartbroken, as spots of sputum spectacularly splurge, and spurs some sparring in an instance. Time for good spirit will spare us this scourge, which hopefully is within spitting distance. So, Mr. Carragher, maybe you should be setting a better example. But what else? There are some other sociable habits, aren't there?
Antisocial habits,
Peter. Yes, which really sort of go in other ways. I mean, you talked about people blowing their nose, but people coughing. I do note that whilst walking down the street, that people cough without putting their hand in front of their mouth, or they sneeze without putting their handkerchief in front.
I think that's right.
It's not just about spitting, is it?
No, I think what there has been, as part of a general change in the culture over, I would say, probably the last 30 years, but maybe the roots of it go back further, of an anti-establishment move. So you can take it into all different areas, wearing a tie when you're working in an office, or where sort of gone out of favour. Anything that you're told to do, keeping your, not putting your elbows on the dinner table when you eat because that's seen as rude. Various other things. So one thing you would be told to do would be cover your mouth when you cough, and that gets to be ignored, or you rebel against it. And it's the same with the coughing as with the spitting. It's part of a rebellion against authority. I think you could see it as a whole as that. One individual incident may be difficult to say, well, what is the move behind this? But this because it's part of a pattern of behaviour of people as a whole in Western society, to go against what used to be known to be good. It used to be known that you covered your mouth when you sneezed or coughed. It used to be known that you didn't spit just willy-nilly. You spat if you had to into your handkerchief, and even then, very quietly. You certainly didn't spit at people, and and all this seems to have been done away with in an attempt to, I don't know what it is, to rebel against the ways of the past. But I fail to see whether what it's been replaced with is better. The sort of free-for-all and the spreading of disease has not resulted in a better society. Now, this is what we're talking about here is different to the spitting that young Mr. Carragher did, in that he He was deliberately spitting. He knew it was something nasty to do, and yet he did it anyway. But the question then can still be asked: why did he feel free to do it? Why would he go there? And as we've intimated earlier, there's a sort of natural, visceral desire to spit at someone if you want to humiliate them. But the fact that he even thought that it was possible to do is part of this, what you might call dumbing down of society down to a baser level, not just a more stupid level as dumbing down.
Yes, it is the crudest form.
It's a cruder level, that's the word I was looking for, a cruder level. The cruding down of behaviour, you could call it. And that seems to be the problem. What are we to do about it? Well, you hinted at legal sanctions. Well, of course, that's possible for that particular activity of spitting on the street, etc., or spitting someone in the face. You could regard it as assault, but and I guess it is. You know, you could, if it's one possible way of treating it. But I think that we need a complete change in the way that we view society. In bring back shame. There's nothing wrong with being ashamed of things that are disgusting. We need to remind people that actually people's prejudices against filthy behaviour, such as spitting and other behaviours, is actually right. Just because it's a prejudice doesn't mean that it's wrong. You know, I mean, some prejudices are wrong, some prejudices are good and right.
The Mr. Carragher, I mean, often when people say things and they try and defend themselves, he was obviously asked to sort of give account for himself. And speaking to the BBC, he did mention that because the actual incident was filmed, of course, this was not anecdotal, there was genuine evidence. You could see it globule for globule as to what he did. And unfortunately, he did admit that he'd done wrong, but it's the statement which stands out, which he said, this is Jamie Carragher speaking, it's a stain on my character, and I have to accept that. It might have been a stain on the girl that sadly was the victim. But it's obvious that, you know, he is remorseful and he does recognise that he's done wrong. So in some ways, that's good. I mean, he's not as though he's condoning his acts. He realises that he shouldn't have done it. He actually, ironically, has a 14-year-old daughter of his own, and so I think that probably he realises that as a father, he hasn't really set a very good example either. But I think really the question by a lot of other people in the media are saying, well, some people believe that he should be held accountable, and others think, well, he's made a mistake and he has apologised and he's clearly contrite, so therefore he should be allowed back. But I personally feel that this is something that is probably the number one most hideous act that somebody could do by inflicting harm on someone else. Yes, you can say bad words, and hitting somebody is really bad. Of course it is. But bearing in mind that we've already highlighted this has to be the crudest form of assault, I personally feel that he should be made an example of. And I would be very disappointed if certainly Sky Sports allowed him back, because I think that it really just sends out the wrong signal. We see it, in football grounds all the time. We mentioned it's not just about football; it's also in other areas of society. So, what could government do? I mean, how could you enforce this? Because, of course, if it's purely, you need witnesses. But I mean, what would you say was a fair punishment for an act such as spitting?
Well, I think that you see, I do take spitting seriously, but I don't think it's something that should be punishable by imprisonment. I think that's the wrong way to go, because, as you know, I'm against imprisonment in as many cases as we can get away with.
Should it be a fine?
I think it should
community work.
I think it should be something public. A fine is all very well, but that the problem with fines, as you know, is that it's for some people, maybe Carragher earns a lot of money, a fine wouldn't mean much to him. So yes, some sort of community work, maybe cleaning out spittoons or something. That would. I mean, the fact, it's interesting when you talk about what should be the punishment, what if you think about what would be a terrible thing that you wouldn't want to do, I think cleaning out spittoons would be one of the worst, next to cleaning out your urinals. I think that's possibly the worst. So yeah, but some sort of community work, I think, would be a good thing to do. Because it would be humiliating and yet not demeaning. Because doing community work, there's nothing demeaning about work, or there shouldn't be. So yeah, I think something like that. If you were going to go down that route, as I say, I mean, my personal opinion is yes. In the actual this particular incident, well, you could decide on what action should be taken, but how are we going to stop this generally poor behaviour? I think the only ways to do it is to bring back shame, and so shame people. So if you're going to bring back a punishment, going to have a punishment, use a punishment which has that element of shame, and so it's public. Maybe, as you say, some sort of community work which is public. You can see that this person's doing it because there's someone who spits, so don't you do it.
Yes. Well, listeners, what do you think? Were you appalled at the act by Jamie Carragher, or did you think, well, actually, you see it every day, wherever you are, and maybe he just happened to get caught and he was just unfortunate? Well, why not let us know? Why not log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts? Well, thank you for listening, and join us again next time for more slightly cleaner discussions with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.